Hey guys, this is your host Thomas Tyree here from On the Hot Podcast. Today, I have some bonus content for you guys. The bonus content we'll be covering today will be in the sport of MMA inside the UFC world. In today's bonus segment, I'll be sharing my UFC 325 main event prediction between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes. So, we are just 1 week removed from the new era for the UFC in the Paramount Plus era. We're going back to back with pay-per-view events this weekend in the UFC, with Alexander Volkanovski defending the featherweight championship against Diego Lopes in the main event slot of UFC 325. So, storylines heading into this featherweight championship fight. Can Alexander Volkanovski remain at the top? Now, in my opinion, Alexander Volkanovski is an all-time great. He has a spot waiting in the UFC Hall of Fame for him when it's all said and done. But you look at Alexander Volkanovski, he is in his late 30s. He's 37 years of age, and he's a two-time featherweight champion. And I've said several times on this platform that I do believe that Alexander Volkanovski is one of, if not the greatest featherweight champion of all time, based off of the resume that he's built at this featherweight division and his long reigning title reign that happened from 2019 to 2024. So we're going to see if Alexander Volkanovski can remain at the top in this featherweight division, because at 37, that's going to be hard to stay at the top of the mountain, because this division is loaded with pure talent here at the featherweight division. You got Diego Lopes is gunning for him in this rematch. Movsar is actually my pick, guys. If you guys didn't see it a few weeks ago, Movsar is actually my pick to finish 2026 as the featherweight champion. He's at the top of this division. You have Yair Rodriguez, Leron Murphy, Aljamain Sterling, Gene Silva, and several others a part of this stacked featherweight division right now. So it's going to be interesting to see if Alexander Volkanovski can remain at the top of this featherweight division. It starts with him doing his job and defeating Diego Lopes once again in this highly anticipated title rematch. And then the final storyline is, can Diego Lopes avenge his loss and win this rematch? Now, he lost against Alexander Volkanovski for the featherweight title. If you guys remember, that fight took place in April of last year, where Ilia Topuria vacated the title and moved up to lightweight, and then obviously became the lightweight champion. So the title became vacant. Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes fought each other for the title. That was a competitive fight, but in the championship rounds, Diego Lopes started to make mistakes, and he faded away against a veteran fighter, Alexander Volkanovski, that's been there, done that several times in his UFC career. And that's one of the reasons why Diego Lopes lost that fight against Alexander Volkanovski. So we're going to see if he's out for revenge. He did pick up an impressive victory in his last outing in September when he defeated Gene Silva by knockout. So we're going to see if Diego Lopes is ready to avenge his loss against Volk. And we're going to see if he's world championship material this weekend in this highly anticipated rematch against Alexander Volkanovski. But enough of the storylines. Let's get into the tail of the tape here. Tail of the tape for the fight. Diego Lopes, the challenger. He is 27-7 in his MMA career. 27 victories, 7 losses, 11 victories come away of knockout, 12 submission victories. Currently the second-ranked contender at the featherweight division. Stands at 5'11" with a reach of 72 inches. Then I'm looking at the champion, Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski has 27 victories, 4 losses in MMA career, 13 victories come away of knockout, 3 submission victories. Currently the reigning, defending, undisputed featherweight champion. Stands at 5'6" with a reach of 71 inches. So the height and the reach advantage goes in favor of the challenger, Diego Lopes. We'll see if he can use that height and reach to his advantage in this highly anticipated rematch. So these are the following game plans that I have for these fighters to follow if they want to walk out of the main event of UFC 325 with that coveted featherweight championship. Starting off with Diego Lopes. I think Diego Lopes needs to land the calf kicks here. It's going to be very important for Diego Lopes to land the calf kicks on Alexander Volkanovski as this fight goes on. And he did a good job landing the calf kicks in the first fight against Alexander Volkanovski. Slow down Volk. You could tell the punishment, taking the calf kicks, he didn't really show it at facial expressions, but at times Volk slowed down a little bit when the calf kicks were landing. So I think Diego Lopes should land the calf kicks on Alexander Volkanovski. So he's not comfortable moving around the octagon and fighting in different lateral movements, which was a killer for Diego Lopes, because when Volk fought in different lateral movements, that was one of the reasons why Alexander Volkanovski set up a lot of traps for Diego Lopes, because he could not adapt to that style when Volk was using his footwork fighting in different lateral movements. So if you slow him down landing the calf kicks, then Volkanovski might not be able to move around very swiftly in the octagon. And I think also, if you're going to land the calf kicks, land the kicks to the sternum, land some body shots to the, land some kick shots to the body to slow down Alexander Volkanovski. Next, land the takedowns. Now, look, Diego Lopes has a lot of submission victories in his MMA career. I think he's going to have to tap into that wrestling background to slow down Alexander Volkanovski somehow, some way. And I know Volk has been in there with some good grapplers and has shown that he has good takedown defense. But I think here, with having 12 submission victories in your MMA career, you're going to have to take Volkanovski to the ground. You're going to have a different approach and not fight fire with fire, trying to strike with Volk for 5 championship rounds again. So be in control. If you can land the takedowns, they could open the door for Diego Lopes to be in control on the mount, land the significant strikes, mount him, shoot for submissions to wear down the veteran fighter in Alexander Volkanovski. And honestly, if you go back and look at that fight, I know Gene Silva is no Alexander Volkanovski, but if you go back and look at that fight where Diego Lopes just fought Gene Silva, he did a good job landing the takedowns, smothering Gene Silva, being on top of the mount, landing significant strikes, and trying to shoot for some submissions to slow down an aggressive offensive fighter. So I think he should take that approach against Alexander Volkanovski. And last but not least, bring that relentless style. Now, this is the reason why I'm a huge fan of Diego Lopes' work in the octagon. That relentless offensive style can make him a future world champion in the UFC. And we'll see if that pays off for UFC 325. But relentless offensive pressure. And Diego Lopes' bread and butter is when he fights his opponents well coming forward. Fighting his opponents, coming forward. So this is where Diego Lopes is in his bag, throwing significant strikes and landing punches and flurries. And I think he's going to have to do that against Alexander Volkanovski here in the main event of UFC 325. Landing significant strikes and win the counter-punching battle. Those are all the game plans I have for Diego Lopes. Now for the champion, Alexander Volkanovski, I think Alexander Volkanovski is going to have to win the counter-punching battle here. I know I just said that about Diego Lopes, but the counter-punching battle was one of the reasons why Alexander Volkanovski walked away with a victory against Diego Lopes last year, springtime. So catch and shoot. I think that should be the game for Alexander Volkanovski. Catch and shoot as much as you can in that octagon when the fight is kept standing. And he made Diego Lopes pay several times in the first fight. Closing in on Diego Lopes. He closed it on Diego Lopes' mistakes to land the hard, significant strikes. I'm telling you guys look back at that film. I was just so amazed with Volk because the jab was just landing all night long in that fight against Diego Lopes. So I think he should win the counter-punching battle and close in on Diego Lopes' mistakes to land the jab, the overhand right. The overhand right is one of Volk's best shots in his arsenal, in his toolbox as well. Land the power hook shots. If he could do that, he could have his way against Diego Lopes. Next, this goes back to my point of what I just said about Diego. Use the footwork to your advantage. Alexander Volkanovski, everybody knows he has tremendous footwork, and he fought well in different lateral movements against Diego Lopes. And Diego Lopes, again, had a lot of problems fighting Diego Lopes had a lot of problems fighting Alexander Volkanovski in different angles. And when he fought in different angles, that's where Alexander Volkanovski opened the door to make Diego Lopes frustrated, and he would catch Diego Lopes off balance, and that's where Alexander Volkanovski will win the counter-punching battle and lead to landing significant strikes to help his case win the fight by unanimous decision in the first fight. So I think that should be one of the game plans for Volk. And last but not least, he has to be alert defensively. Now, this is why I'm a little concerned here, because Volk is 37 years of age, and he has to avoid the big shots. He got dropped 2 times in the first fight against Diego Lopes. And you might not get lucky enough to survive one punch that might land on the button. We've seen Volk has been very chinny over the last few years. He got knocked out by some big shots. And I know these are 2 top 3 pound-for-pound fighters in the world, but Diego Lopes packs a punch like these guys that I'm about to mention. You look at the rematch where he accepted the rematch on a 12 days notice against Islam Makhachev. got hit right on the button and got knocked out by Makachev. Then fast forward a few months later, early 2024, nearly 2 years ago, where he lost the featherweight championship against Ilya Tuporia. Walked into a shot and got knocked out. So he cannot walk into a shot. He must be alert defensively. I would fight in the high guard and a defensive standpoint a lot in this fight to avoid the big shots that Diego Lopes might land, because he did get knocked down 2 times in the first fight. He cannot afford to take a lot of damage here against Diego Lopes, in my opinion. But whew, this is close. With that being said, I'm gonna go with Alexander Volkanovski to defeat Diego Lopes by decision in the main event of UFC 325 to retain his featherweight championship. Now, again, this will be another 50-50 fight, another war between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes in this highly anticipated rematch. But I do believe that Alexander Volkanovski will once again outclass and outwork Diego Lopes in the championship rounds. He's going to take him to the deep waters and drown him in the championship rounds for rounds 4 and 5. But you look at this fight, I think, once again, just like the first fight, Alexander Volkanovski is going to win the counter-punching battle. He's going to land more significant strikes to help his case to win the fight, once again, by decision against Diego Lopes. I think he's going to work behind the jab. You guys look at the first fight between himself and Diego Lopes. He was working behind the jab, and that was killing Diego Lopes. Made him very frustrated. So I think Volk, when the fight is kept standing, is going to work behind the jab, land the overhand right. That's one of Volk's best punches in his arsenal, in his toolbox, the overhand right. Diego Lopes is one of the reasons why Diego Lopes had a hard time against Volk in the later rounds was due to the fact that Diego Lopes did not have no damn head movement whatsoever. If you have no damn head movement against Volk in this rematch, it's only going to be worse this time. So I think if the head movement is not there on a defensive standpoint, Volkanovski should take full advantage of this as the fight goes on. But I think Alexander Volkanovski is going to land the 1-2 combinations, fight well in different lateral movements. That's another reason why he defeated Diego Lopes, because Diego Lopes is a straightforward fighter. He likes to fight coming forward, and he doesn't have the footwork that Volk has. So when Volkanovski was moving around the octagon very swiftly, fighting in different lateral movements, that is what made Diego Lopes frustrated, because he could not land the big strikes once Volk was fighting in different lateral movements. And I think Alexander Volkanovski is going to catch Diego Lopes off balance, land the power shots, land the significant strikes. And I think Alexander Volkanovski is going to send a message to everybody that he's still here at the featherweight division in the main event of UFC 325. But that is my Alexander Volkanovski Diego Lopes fight prediction. That is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off. And I'll see you guys on next week's episode.